All right, any guesses what this one's showing? Well, first let's just take a look at what we have here. So the first thing I see is that it's in French. So unfortunately, even though it does have a title, it does have a legend, I can't read it. Maybe some of you know French and can read it. But what can we guess just based off of the shapes here? So here we've got what looks like maybe a chart of some sort. We've got an axis here. It goes from 0 to 30, although kind of the opposite direction, which you would usually think. We see here, this label here, it says Moscow. I know what that means.
It might be a picture of a graph of a place because I can tell that there's measurements right there.
Oh, yeah, okay, so there's a scale here. So yeah, so you're right, this is a map. So we can see, I think this town is a town in Poland. That is Moscow, the capital of Russia. So this is a visualization of a march. So this is an army, Napoleon's army. You can see. Okay, it doesn't say Napoleon right out. It says the French army, and they're invading Russia in 1812 to 1813. So they start out, they head out from France, obviously, but they've gotten this far. They've gotten to Poland, and they've got a huge army, and that's represented by the width of this line. And this, and you can see it tells you how many people. 422,000. So there's 422,000 soldiers marching in that army. Does anybody know the population of, say, Albuquerque? Does anybody live in Albuquerque? People? So Albuquerque has about 1 million people. So about half an Albuquerque is marching. But as we can see, it decreased over time. Why do people think that is?
Disease.
Right?
Lack of food or water and maybe medicine.
Right, so they either die from an illness or they starve to death. Any other ideas? What do people think this chart is showing? Why is there a chart? And we can see there's lines that are tying it to various points.
I've seen this before. They did separate, like the army did separate early on. That's what the second line is showing.
Okay, so these are defectors.
Yeah, they separated. But then the army also did dwindle in numbers.
So it's if you take a look here, I don't know French, but I do know that French is a little like English. So we see this as a graphic table, what we might call a chart, of temperature in degrees on a thermometer, and they use a kind of weird scale called Reaumur. So yeah, this is temperature over time. So we can see it's really cold here, minus 30. And then, warms up a little bit. But they were marching during a brutal Russian winter. A lot of people were getting frostbite, getting illness. They were not happy. Many of them died or simply left, defected. They're like, screw this, I'm going to go back home to France. So you can see by the time we get to Moscow, we go from 422,000 to 400,000. A low branch leaves to go for, say, we have 145,000. By the time they get to Moscow, they're only 100,000. They're a quarter of what they started out with. JP, do you know what year this was produced?
This was done in the 1830s.
Okay.
I'm sorry, 1869.
Okay, oh yeah, okay.
We can read. You want me to explain this one?
Go for it.
Okay. So this is, hi everybody, JP. Met some of you. Know some, don't know others, but, so this is my contribution to this data visualization. This is one of the coolest, most interesting charts you will ever see, and scaled to time, if you will. Like this being done in 1869 is so data dense that it's hard to wrap your mind around. So like Arlo was saying, you have, this is the equivalent of the defeat of the Nazis in Moscow in 1810. And that's how crushing France was defeated. France owned the world in 1810. Napoleon decides to march on Moscow and to try to conquer Russia, which never do that. If you're ever in charge of anything, never try to conquer Moscow, especially in winter. So this shows, starting from Krono, Poland, marching to Moscow, starting with an army of 420,000 people. The war, attrition, starvation, disease takes Napoleon's army from 400,000 people, as I was saying, down to about 100,000 people by the time he gets to Moscow. The Russian army manages to rout Napoleon at Moscow, and Menard shows it by going with the tan to Moscow, and the rout is in black when Napoleon's army is defeated. All right. Here's what's going on with this scale on the bottom. So this represents the retreat from Moscow in terms of temperature. You have points below 0. Remember, this is the Russian winter. If you think that Santa Fe gets cold, or if you think that Espanola gets cold, this is really cold, -30 below in the Russian winter. All right. So starting from Moscow, you can see the army starts retreating, 100,000 people, dwindling 96,000 people, 87,000 people, and Menard is drawing points to certain events with evenings. And you can see at each of these points, if you look really closely, there are these little notches on the retreating army. This represents tens of thousands of people now. And this is really cool stuff. This is a little branch where the initial invading army kind of takes this little town here. And this is a reinforcement. So you can see 30,000 people joining with 80,000, joining with 20,000 people, and we have 50,000 people. -20 below one evening, they're trying to cross a river. And this retreating army goes on this frozen river. The river cracks beneath them, and 30,000 people fall into the water and drown. That's represented by just a little bitty, this line of, what, 60,000 people goes down to 30,000 people like that. By the time they get back home, 4,000 people remain. So that's the story of Napoleon's defeat in graphic form with very cold, hard data. This map represents, what variables are we talking about here? What have I just talked about? What are we showing? I mean, anything, like.
There's writing in French that I see.
There's writing in French?
Yeah.
Yes. I wish I could read French.
It's basically like a timeline of the whole fight.
Timeline, as well as?
I don't know.
You're close. So it's both time and.
Oh, I know it's not space.
It is space.
Oh, it is space.
Yes, this is both time and a map. So it's showing the army advancing. It shows X, Y coordinates. It shows the relative position of the army on a map. It shows the size of the army. It shows the time of the army. So if they can do this in 1869, imagine what we can do today.
So, JP, I've heard this was called like the first infographic.
This is the first serious infographic. I stole this from Ed Tufte, who does data visualization. This is a really dense infographic. The cool thing about these things is you can look at them, and you can get lost in the story. There's not just one thing that's telling you. You can look at the parts that are interesting to you, like where were they retreating? Where were they on this day of retreat? What was the temperature at this day of retreat? You can really get lost in the data. So, but
Yeah, thank you for covering that. That was